Last week, I did something I'd never done before. I went away, alone, no children, no husband, no one needing anything from me for 3 whole days. I came back 4 days ago, and I've been sitting with what to say about it ever since. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mind and Motherhood. If you're new here, I'm so glad that you found this space. My name is Anne. I'm a psychiatrist, a wife, and a mom of 4. This month, we've been exploring permission to pause, a whole month dedicated to rest, reflection, and returning to yourself. Last week, I did something that feels like the most personal thing I've done in relation to this theme. I decided to go on a solo trip, alone, without my children, without my husband. And I should say that this is the very first time I've traveled by myself ever since becoming a mom. I spent 3 days away, and today I would like to share how that really felt like. Not the polished, serene version, but the real version. That starts with the guilt that I felt as soon as my husband and children dropped me off at the airport. Before I tell you what this trip gave me, I would like to tell you what it felt like, because I feel that this part matters as well. I felt guilty, not just a little guilty, but persistently, uncomfortably, and loudly guilty. As I've mentioned previously, my youngest child, who's just turned 1, is mostly breastfed. So leaving was not only emotionally complicated, but it was also logistically complicated because I had to pump some milk and store it. I also needed to carry a breast pump to express milk throughout my trip. And even after organizing everything, even with my husband and my family supportive, I still wondered whether this was the right decision. All the way into the aeroplane, I kept asking myself whether I should just turn back and go back home. And I think that this is something that is worth naming honestly. As a psychiatrist, I know how important rest is. I know how important self-care is. And I keep talking about burnout and the effects of it. I know the cost of chronic caregiving without recovery. And yet, the guilt was still there. It followed me out the door and sat next to me the whole way. And what I've come to understand throughout preparing for this trip is that guilt really means that we are doing something wrong. It means that we are doing something different, something that is unfamiliar to us. And for many of us, especially for mothers, choosing ourselves is usually an unfamiliar choice. And this is not because we are weak. This is because we've been taught quietly and consistently that choosing ourselves is something that we should justify. I arrived. I put my bags down and I sat on the edge of the bed. And my first instinct was to reach for my phone, not because anything needed my attention, but because the silence and the stillness felt uncomfortable, unfamiliar, very strange. And I sat with that for a moment because I realized that I couldn't remember a time when I was this still, when no one was calling out to me, when nothing needed to be tended to, where there was no task waiting, no child to calm down, just silence, just me and quiet. And honestly, it took longer than I expected to settle into this silence. For the first few hours, I continued to make mental lists of what was needed at home, what I may have forgotten, what the children could be doing at this time. And I kept wondering whether I should do something useful with my time. But gradually, I felt the mental noise begin to shift. Not all of a sudden, but slowly and in layers. I laid down on the bed for a few minutes, just me. I went out for a meal and enjoyed it without having to cut up anyone's food. I managed to read 3 chapters of a book without any disturbance. I walked without a destination or a reason and actually enjoyed it. And slowly, with each unhurried hour, I began to feel my body unclench. I began to notice things that I hadn't noticed in months. The light of the sun, the quality of the light in the afternoon, the taste of the food that I was eating, people walking, minding their own business, and how my body felt genuinely tired underneath everything I'd been pushing through. It felt like turning the volume low enough to finally listen and hear something that had been trying to speak to me for a very long time. There's something that I would like us to talk about that I feel doesn't get enough airtime: the difference between loneliness and solitude. Because before I left for my trip, a few people asked whether I wasn't afraid of getting lonely. But honestly, no, that wasn't my fear. Loneliness is an ache. It's the experience of wanting connection but not having it. It's absence, but solitude is something else entirely. It's presence, presence with yourself rather than with anyone else. It's something that you choose, something that's intentional. And when it's done properly, it doesn't feel empty at all. It feels like finally arriving somewhere that you've been traveling to for a very long time. And I think many mothers, many caregivers, many people in helping professions go for a very long time without experiencing real solitude. Because you're always needed. You always need to put others first. And even if you want to, the structure of your life makes it impossible to access real solitude. But what this trip showed me is that solitude is not a luxury. It's actually something that is necessary. It's actually how we stay connected to ourselves. And when we lose that connection, when we become so focused on everyone around us and stop listening to that inner voice, something in us becomes quiet. I noticed this when I asked myself a question that I hadn't asked for a long time. What do I enjoy? Not what am I good at, or what is needed from me, or what I'm responsible for, but what I really enjoy. And at first I was stunned because I couldn't remember what I actually enjoyed. But eventually the answer came. Slowly, but it came. And to me, that is very significant. I want to be honest about what 3 days of solitude revealed. Some of it was restful and beautiful. Reading, long walks in the sun, sightseeing, reaching out to my inner child, enjoying food without having to be responsible for anyone else, and the particular piece of just being myself. But some of it was also confronting, because when the noise stops, what's underneath becomes more audible. And what I had was that I'd been running on empty for longer than I had admitted. Not in a dramatic way, not in any particular way that anyone around me would have noticed, but in the quiet, cumulative way that happens when you continue emptying yourself without refilling. I was tired, deeply tired, in a way that a long bath or a full night's sleep could not touch. And I think that tiredness had become so familiar that I'd stopped recognizing it as something that needed attention. I had just come to accept it as something that came with this season of life. And this trip gave me enough distance to see it clearly and enough stillness to ask, what will it take for me to give myself the same care and the same attention that I give to everyone else? That question felt new, but it also felt important. I want to be careful not to overstate what 3 days can do. I came back to the same life, the same beautiful, demanding, chaotic life I left behind. A husband, 4 young children, a baby who needed feeding the very moment he saw me, laundry, meal preparations, school bags, everything exactly where I had left it. Nothing external had changed, but something had shifted internally. I came back with a clarity that I hadn't had in months. Not answers to everything, just a clearer sense of what I needed and confidence that those things were worth attending to. I also came back with something that I hadn't expected: gratitude, not just for the trip, but also for the life that I had temporarily stepped away from. The noise, the chaos, the love, the hugs. Sometimes you need the contrast to fully appreciate what you have. The small things that I'm choosing to hold on to, they don't require a trip. A few minutes of silence before everyone wakes up. A walk without headphones, even a short one. A breath before I react or respond. Reading, journaling without guilt. These things were always available to me, but I guess sometimes I forgot how important it was to prioritize them. And for me, that's the real shift. Not 3 days away, the permission. If you're sitting with something as you watch this, a quiet longing for space or rest or a moment that belongs only to you, I want to say this to you directly. You don't need to take a trip to give yourself permission to pause. You don't need to wait until the children are older or things are calmer or more settled. You just need to be willing to include yourself in the care that you so freely give to others. And that's what this month has been about. Not a holiday, not an escape, but the quiet, sometimes uncomfortable, deeply necessary act of saying, I matter too. I came home from that trip more myself than I felt in a long time. Not a new version of myself, a more remembered one. And I think that's what rest really gives us. Not transformation, but recognition. The recognition that we were always worth coming back to. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If this resonated, I'd like to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever taken time away for yourself? Or is this something that still feels out of reach right now? Be honest. Someone might need to hear this. I look forward to seeing you again next time. But until then, please remember to take a breath and be kind to yourself. Next week, we are talking about how to carry this pause back into the ordinary. How to hold on to what rest gives you when real life comes rushing back in. Don't forget to like, share with someone who might need this. and subscribe to the channel so that you become part of this community. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on future videos.